Welcome back to the Rumpus Room, where I share my long-term impressions of audio gear I've actually lived with, not just auditioned for a weekend. Today we're diving into something proudly Canadian, the Totem Acoustic Bison Tower. A two-way floor stander with a single midwoofer, one tweeter. It's a compact, elegant, and very Totem design. Now, let me be clear. Totem Acoustic did not provide these speakers, and all my impressions I speak about are 100% my own. I also don't have the ability to do any sound measurements, so I'll let my ears do the measuring for me. Now, the Bison Tower sits in Totem's reimagined lineup. Clean lines, smaller footprint than anything in its class, but designed to deliver the company's signature big sound from a small box. Totem has the ability to get massive sound out of compact speaker designs. Now, this isn't my first experience with Totem Acoustic. I owned a pair of Totem Arrows for several years, and they sounded amazing. They had huge soundstage, incredible imaging, and they were very fast for an extremely small floor standing speaker. I was looking for something similar, but with a fuller sound, a little more bass, and thought I'd give these Totem Bisons a try. Since my experience with the Arrows was so good, I had big expectations for these. Now, Totem has several Bison models in their lineup. They have a bookshelf speaker, a center channel, and two towers, which they call floor standers. The Bison towers are a two-way ported design with a 1.3 or 33mm soft dome tweeter. That is the highlight of these speakers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. It also has a 5¼ inch or 146mm driver with a copper-clad voice coil that has a longer throw that handles the mid-bass and bass frequencies. Totem is known for designing and manufacturing some of the best drivers in the industry. They do outsource driver manufacturing, as in this case here, but they do it to their own specifications. And you may recognize Totem speaker drivers on some of their older models from how they look on the outside, but it's the customization you don't see that makes the drivers unique. The Bisons have a suggested power rating of 30 to 150 watts. They are 88 dB sensitive, so they're pretty easy to drive, and they have an impedance rating of 8 ohms. So these specs suggest that they can be driven by most amplifiers on the market. The terminals are a 4-way bi-wireable post, and jumpers are included. These speakers are small for a tower. They measure just under 7 inches wide and are a little over 9 inches deep, and they stand only 33.45 to be exact inches tall. Now, the frequency range is from 33 Hertz, which is impressive, to 30 kilohertz, and they are rear ported. Now, if you look on the back, there's a second hole located 3 to 4 inches from the bottom, which is an access point to a compartment that can be filled with a mass loading material. Something like kiln-dried sand or lead shot, or even a clay-based cat litter. Just make sure whatever you're using doesn't contain any moisture, as moisture will degrade the inside of the speaker. This chamber is independent and sealed off to the speaker area. So adding mass to the speaker can result in sharper, cleaner bass frequencies, essentially making that speaker heavier. My Totem Arrows had a similar chamber, and I was able to add 5 to 6 pounds of acoustic sand, and it made a big difference. I'll be trying sand at some point in the Bisons, but as they stand now, they don't have any mass loading in them. At first glance, it's an understated speaker. No wild curves or flashy veneers, just beautifully finished cabinets with rounded edges that aid in reducing refraction, solid construction, and that minimalist Totem aesthetic. No fake wood wraps that will separate or peel over time, and the Bisons are offered in 3 finishes: black ash, white oak, and as you see here, satin white. They also include magnetic speaker grills for a bit of protection. Now, about those speaker grills. Totem recommends listening without the grills attached. As you know, grills can affect the sound, and I've noticed a difference between the grills being on and off, mostly in the higher frequencies. The Bisons are constructed using variable density fiberboard. And from what Vince, the owner and chief designer, says, is that this allows the speaker to expand and contract without separating or degrading. Totem has a unique way in which they bond or connect the sides of their speaker cabinets. Totem uses a lock miter design. This results in a sturdier box by increasing the surface area in which the cabinet mates to each other. The unique construction elements don't stop there. Totem laminates both the inside and the outside of the cabinet and then uses a special coating made of borosilicate on the inside of the cabinet where the speakers are. Now, borosilicate is composed of two components, silica and boron trioxide. It's a compound used in high-stress space applications to dissipate heat and energy very quickly. Totem uses this borosilicate coating for several reasons. It's been proven to not break down over time or compact like fiber fill, which is used in many speakers. You know, that fluffy stuff inside of pillows. It increases rigidity, making the cabinet more inert. It also improves sonic performance by absorbing internal reflections, so stops those sound waves from bouncing around inside the cabinet. It also allows the internal cabinet volume to be as large as possible. Now, this is a bonus when designing small enclosures, no extra fill taking up space. Now, speaking of unwanted frequencies, Totem also has a different take on speaker feet and speaker isolation. Their feet are called claws, which go along with their wild Canadian animal naming convention. In the case of Bison floor standards, the claws are constructed of a composite material called Delrin, and it almost feels like a dense or heavy plastic mixed with some kind of metal. Other speakers in the Totem lineup have a similar shaped claw, but are constructed from cast aluminum. Totem claims the claws on the Bisons have been shaped in such a way to tune out unwanted frequencies that get transferred directly into the floor. This is where decoupling comes in. Now, I'll talk about decoupling in a future video and some great products that I found that help eliminate unwanted vibrations. In my case, I added some sticky rubber acoustic pads underneath the claws, just to dampen the frequency a bit more, but I found out it didn't actually make a difference. But I did alleviate the speaker from sliding around on the floor. Now, the claws also have an 1/4 inch 20mm thread, so you can add carpet spikes if needed. Totem includes 3 claws for each speaker, and I found the 3-claw approach works well on flat and uneven surfaces. Holes are pre-drilled, and attaching the claws only took a few minutes. But take care when attaching them. I'd use a hand screwdriver to fasten them, not a power drill. Now, what I really appreciate is that this is a 2-driver design. 1 mid-bass driver and 1 tweeter. But don't let that simplicity fool you. Totem's engineering is all about phase coherence and full range realism. The speakers perform like a much larger floor standing speaker, and I mean much larger. Now, I ran the Bisons through a couple of different amplifiers over the past several months. An integrated Peachtree Audio Carina that provided 150 watts per channel, and it was Class D from Hypex N-Core modules. I also have an older Yamaha A300, which provides 60 watts of Class AB per channel. And then I've got a cheap Fuzzy Audio DA2120A that claims 50 watts per channel. And then finally, I have my reference setup, which is a Musician Monceros Class A balanced preamp feeding a DIY Class D with Hypex Nolly modules, and that supplies 250 watts. They all seem to sound great except for the Fuzzy. It sounded like it passed, but it lacked the dynamics of the other amplifiers. The Bisons mated well with the Peachtree and the Yamaha, but excelled with the DIY audio amp. And I'll review this at a later date. The Class D modules and the Musician preamp work fantastic with the Bisons. These speakers are simple to set up. Totem suggests no tone is required, and to place them 12 inches from the back wall and 6 feet apart to start. That's exactly what I did. I found at first though I had them placed too close to the wall, a little too much bass for the rumpus room. Imaging was very good, but not what I had experienced with my Totem Arrows. I moved the speakers away from the wall incrementally, and they started to sound better and better. The sound stage started to open up, but the big difference was now I had music coming from behind the speakers, between the wall and the speakers. The Totem imaging I've experienced previously was beginning to reveal itself. Next change was to increase the distance between each speaker. I started with a few inches at a time until the Bisons were approximately 9 feet apart. This is when the sound stage really increased. Music sounded like it was coming from 2 feet beyond the outside of the speaker edges. I think that narrow front baffle design might be why these speakers sound so wide. Very little surface area to interfere with the sound. As an important side note, I used the same music track while setting up the speakers. I used Yellow's Electrified 2. I know this track well, I know how it sounds, and I've heard it through headphones and a variety of different speakers. It's electronic music with exaggerated soundstage and layering, along with great separation of instruments. A great track to test how your system performs. Now, I did come to a point where I had to stop moving the speakers apart as the center imaging started to lose focus. So I moved them back to where that focus was intense again. And this may not be a limitation of the speaker, but the speaker interaction with the rumpus room and how the rumpus room is set up. At this point, I knew I had found the perfect setup, the perfect speaker position. And the speakers disappeared in the room. And I mean, they really disappeared. Close your eyes and you're not listening to speakers anymore. You're listening to music with a great soundstage and amazing depth. Let's talk about sound. The mid-range is where Totem has always excelled, and the Bison Tower carries that DNA forward. Vocals have that holographic presence, the breathy, textured, and alive. And this was evident when listening to Ben Harper's Welcome to the Cruel World or Tom Waits' Little Drop of Poison. Now, Tom's voice is gritty and scratchy, and the Bisons replicate it well. The mid-range is detailed, instruments stay separated, and I didn't hear any muddiness. The tweeter is crisp but never edgy. Cymbals shimmer naturally, not sizzling. It's articulate, detailed, and smooth, and it's a great match for long listening sessions. I was never fatigued or irritated when listening to music with high notes, such as the frequencies found in the live version of I'd Rather Go Blind by Jeff Beck and Beth Hart. Jeff Beck's guitar solo never got to the point where the high notes were irritating and there was never any loss in detail with Beth's voice. I have a sensitivity to the grittier high frequencies, and none of that with these Bisons. And that's one reason I mentioned earlier the magic of this tweeter. I've had speakers in the past with metal dome tweeters, and they just aren't for me. That's just me though. There may be good ones out there, but I have yet to find one that doesn't punch me right in the ear. The larger Bison 1.3 inch tweeter seems to be able to dip down into those high mid-ranges and seamlessly work with that 5.25 inch woofer. The Bison bass surprised me. For a single smaller paper composite 5.25 inch driver, it digs lower than you'd expect. I don't have a meter to check frequencies, but I'm sure they got down close to claimed 30 Hertz. In most cases, a subwoofer is not required. Now, I've tried a subwoofer with these, and it does add a bit of more low-end punch and can fill out those really low notes if you've got a larger room. Most times I listen without the subwoofer. I recently attended a performance at a local church that has some great acoustics. The next day I queued up the music I'd heard the night before and was really surprised at how close the live performance was to a recorded performance. The Bisons do very well with live performances, even those recordings that are poorly produced. I found the Bisons tend to be a little more on the forgiving side. Poor recordings still sound decent, nothing added or subtracted, but just really clear. I've got a recording of Van Morrison, Hymns to the Silence, on vinyl, and the Bisons are able to bring out the notes on the piano in the track Village Idiot better than any speaker that I've heard recently. The more I listen to these speakers, the more I'm impressed. The word I use to describe the Bison Tower is coherence. Everything feels connected. The handoff between the woofer and the tweeter is smooth and seamless. By now you may be wondering if I'm being paid by Totem for this glowing review. I assure you I am not. I do really enjoy these speakers in my odd-shaped space. They work well, and I've struggled to find any kind of limitations. These speakers are, though, designed for a smaller or mid-sized room. A smaller driver is going to reach its limits at some point in terms of being able to pressurize a larger room. Now, they do very well in my 15 by 12 foot listening space. If I had a large room, I'd be looking to maybe addition the Bison Twin Tower. I'm sure that extra driver would fill out the larger room a little easier. A possible limitation might be the height of the speaker, and I mean might be a limitation. The only reason I mention this is I thought a tweeter was supposed to be placed around ear level. The Bisons are short, and the tweeter is placed 5 to 6 inches lower than my ears in my listening position. Totem speakers, though, tend to have great vertical dispersion. The Bisons are no different. Now, I tried elevating the speaker 2 inches using a patio stone. I did find a slight positive difference in the sound. Problem is, I couldn't tell if the dense patio stone was acting as a buffer between the floor and the speaker, or was it the tweeter was now aligned with my ear. In any case, the difference was so slight, I don't know what made the difference. I ended up removing the patio stones as they're ugly and I keep stubbing my toes on them. I've concluded that the Bison does in fact have an amazing vertical soundstage. And for those audiophiles who subscribe to the tweeter must be at ear level, may have to throw out that misconception before they give these a listen. So some final thoughts. To me, the Totem Bison Tower isn't about specs or brute force, it's about connection. If you value emotional engagement, imaging, and musical realism in a speaker that fits almost anywhere, the Bison Tower deserves a serious audition. It's that rare product that feels both sophisticated and soulful, and it's a reminder of why Totem still has a special place in the world of high fidelity. The Bisons do benefit from decent amplification and sources. I don't have high-end gear, but I think it's fairly decent. I found they performed well with Class A, B, and higher-end Class D. These speakers at full retail are not cheap. They list for $3,500 Canadian, and I've seen them go on sale a little bit below $3,000. Used pairs are hard to come by, but I've seen them listed once on Facebook Marketplace and then another time on a local used audio site. I think audio enthusiasts are going to hang on to these. So if you have a Totem dealer nearby, I encourage you to audition the Bison Towers. You won't be disappointed. In fact, you'll be surprised at how much high quality sound can come out of such a small speaker. Well, that's it for this one. Thanks for hanging out in the Rumpus Room. If you found this useful, give it a thumbs up and let me know your comments on what Totem models you've heard, or what small floor-standing speaker surprised you the most lately. Until next time, take a bit of time for yourself and listen to your favorite album or stream some new music. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you soon.